أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله Al-Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam. Imam Hussain has been given the title, and rightly so, of the father of free souls, or father of free people, or free man. And quite rightly, it's a title that belongs with him. When we look at him, his defiance, his resilience, his sense of self-respect, self-worth and dignity, refusal to bow before any authority other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a deep awakening within us. We relate with him. We feel that truth inside us, and he becomes that iconic figure that we relate to and we want to emulate. But here comes the question, that if he was such, and if he was nurtured by the Prophet himself, and he began to surrender to Allah to an extent that he became fearless and would not want to humiliate himself by bowing down to any worldly authority that was unjust, then how was he put to death so soon after the demise of the Prophet? You see, this question needs to be thought of, that why were those people who had learned from his grandfather, and a lot of the people, or many of the people there, were still alive who had seen his grandfather, and the second generation who had learned from those who had seen the Blessed Prophet Muhammad. They had the Quran with them. The Khulafa had ruled over them. How did things go so wrong so soon after the demise of the Prophet? We see here that when the Prophet left this world, Islam began to spread. And in the conquest of land, the essential feature of Islam went amiss. The essential feature of Islam was nurturing the souls morally, bringing them into a virtuous state and orienting them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, after the Prophet, we had Islam for the major part without the virtue of Islam. Islam without the sense of God. And in fact, this is what we see today amongst the Muslims, Christians, Jews, Hindus. Every religion came with that central message of God orientation and acquisition of a virtuous state, evolving beyond our human frailties and vulnerabilities, reconciling them within the belief of God and coming to a higher level of existence. Every religion brings that same message, but that essential part of the message is not retained. The formal part of religions is retained. So when Hussain Salamullah alayhi is killed and put to death, one of the justifications is the narration of the Prophet himself, that whoever rises or challenges the authority of the day, put them to death. Now here, the Muslims use this as one of the justifications amongst maybe others to put Imam Hussain to death. But what they did not understand is that defying an authority for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not meant by this hadith. The hadith means anybody who defies, even if it is an accurate hadith, anybody who defies or raises arms or rises against an ordained Khalifa who is establishing the will of God, then put them to death, even if it is taken to be Sahih. But otherwise, if the Khalif himself is moving people away from the central message of God, then that hadith can surely not be used to justify. Now there's another misconception that the Sunnis killed Imam Hussain, and the Sunnis rebuttal and they say, no, the Shias killed Imam Hussain. Go and study history. There were no Sunnis or Shias the likes of which we have today. Religion was very amorphous. There was a notion of the Shia of Ali, a political Shiaism, just as there was the notion of the Shia of Uthman, and later on the political followers of Bani Umayyah. But certainly the theological schools that distinctly delineate one group as opposed to the others, they did not exist, neither Sunni nor Shia. This was after the martyrdom of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. So these were the Muslims who put Imam Hussain to death. Now Imam Hussain on the day of Ashura was constantly telling them, I placed this Quran upon my head. He opened the Quran and placed it upon his head. He said, within the east and the west of this earth, is there a grandson of your prophet alive? He said, ask such and such, those Sahaba who were alive. He said, ask them, did the Prophet not say this about me? Did the Prophet not say this about me? And will you then put me to death? Their only response was, pledge allegiance or face the sword. At that point he says, or of course, it is echoed in his words, and he said it before this point, he said, a false claimant, the son of a false claimant, has left me between either humiliating myself by pledging allegiance to him or accepting death. By Allah, this is far from me such humiliation that I pledge allegiance to such a corrupt person. At other point he said, I will not pledge allegiance in humiliation to you, O Yazid, and neither shall I flee like the fleeing of a slave. I will stand up for what I believe, and I will give my life. What we see from here is that after the demise of the Prophet, the moral nurturing of the Prophet went missing. And the spiritual orientation with God and centricity with God was no longer emphasized. The Muslims were consolidating their powers. Khalifa Abu Bakr and Khalifa Umar did not hoard up wealth for themselves. I know this. But they were more concerned in expanding the boundaries of the Muslims as opposed to nurturing the minds of the Muslims. And that is the biggest failure within every faith. The faith becomes a formal identity and the essence of the faith goes missing. The reason why Hussein's appeal is so broad, and I will tell you this, the Sunnis actually commemorate Hussein like the Shia. They are no different. They are lovers of the family of the Prophet. I know at one point we had the Salafi scholars who were defending Yazid through these hadith, these false fabricated hadith, or even if they be true, not looking at them within their proper rightful context. But today you will find very few, even Salafis, defending Yazid. I know our Sunni brothers still hesitate, a lot of them, from cursing Yazid and distancing themselves from Yazid, but they should open their hearts and curse, not the masses amongst the Sunnis. These people are good, they're righteous, but the scholars amongst the Sunni, because they are indoctrinated otherwise and they are fearful. They are fearful to say, look, Yazid, we disassociate with him. May God curse him and may God punish him for tearing up Islam, for killing the son of the Prophet, for killing the Imam that the Prophet has designated as an Imam, and according to our own literature. They need to get that confidence. You know, the odd thing with our Sunni scholars is that when you tell them that, will you disassociate with Yazid? They say yes, his actions were wrong. But we do not condemn him for killing Imam Hussain, because it was Umar ibn Sa'd who killed Imam Hussain. But Umar ibn Saad killed Imam Hussain. Where does the buck of the responsibility stop? With whom does it rest? So I ask him another question. Did the forces of Yazid desecrate the grave of the Prophet? Did they invade Medina? Did they kill the inhabitants of Medina? Did they rape the women of Medina? And under whose orders was this? Under the orders of Yazid. Now do you find it easier to curse this person? Then of course the penny drops. That now if we curse him, we are no longer aligned with the Shia. You see, this is a problem with us. This is the problem, the Shia-Sunni issue that we have. It's a huge problem. And it's barring our minds from thinking accurately and our souls from leading accurately to yielding to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in surrender and submission. In any case, the people who killed Imam Hussain are not Sunnis and are not Shias by today's terms. But there were people who called Imam Hussain to support them in their uprising against the Khilafah of Yazid. We cannot deny this. Imam Hussain, en route to Karbala, he produces sacks of letters. And he said, did you people not invite me to lead you on the righteous course against a false Khalifa? Now if you want to retreat and withdraw your allegiance, then let me be, and I'll be on my way, and I will go away. So many of these people who are killing Imam Hussain are the people who called Imam Hussain to Kufa in the first place. And that should be understood accurately by the Shia. But what happened at that point was that these people were not nurtured in Islam accurately. They still had the love of this life. Fear still prevailed over them. Their greed, their fear were their vulnerabilities that were exploited by the rulers of the day. And very easily, the same people who swore to die for Hussain were now holding their swords against Hussain. And how can you make sense of this? Because every one of those people who was gathered to kill Imam Hussain, and a lot of them were people who had called Imam Hussain to Kufa in the first instance, none of them had guarantees that they would be able to walk away from the battle of Karbala alive. Every one of them knew that there is a possibility that we will be killed. And if we are killed, then we are killed in the process of trying to kill somebody who we ourselves have called. So now look at their loss. Due to fear of death, they side with the army of Umar ibn Saad. And yet death looms over their heads. They can't make that simple calculation that if we stay on the side of Hussain, if we are destined to die, we will die and we will attain the pleasure of Allah and His Messenger. But if we are on the other side and if we are killed, we will be in damnation for eternity. This is how the minds are. When fear grips us, when greed overpowers us, we lose sight of the truth. Now that was the problem in the initial phase of Islam. But this is the same problem that we have today. That human condition has not left us. The only thing is that we have matured with the passage of time and we have become better and more refined globally as a global humanity. But you see what Hussain does is when we hear the story of Hussain, we too stand in defiance. This reminder of Hussain, annual reminder of Hussain, is actually reviving that spirit of freedom within us. Now I've seen people who are unforgiving, but when they start cheering for Hussain, seek forgiveness at that point. They will forgive. It's a source of purification. I have seen people who are cowardly, but you spur them on through Hussain, they will stand gallantly. It is amazing. It seems that Allah in His decree has very meaningfully placed Hussain at the helm of Islam, together with his grandfather. There is something in him that resonates deep within us. There is a Hussain within us that needs to be awoken. And this annual remembrance of Hussain awakens that inner Hussain to a degree. So the remembrance of Hussain Salamullah alayhi does a lot for the community. Now I want to say this. When Marhum Imam Khomeini came to the scene, and he was in Paris, and the Shah had imposed curfew, and we would receive the communications of Imam Khomeini on television and other places, we used to hear of these communications. At one point he said, if you come out onto the streets at this point, Shah is gone, he's deposed. Now we saw those scenes on television. The women of Iran were wearing white abaya, maybe to symbolize their own shrouds, making a symbolic gesture that, look, we will not be coerced through fear of death or fear of loss. And I remember, I was in 15 years or something, and I remember those women were beating their chests and saying, Ya Hussain, from what I saw on national media outlets, BBC must have been. And as soon as they marched and the soldiers opened fire upon them, a group of them died, others started marching forward. And the soldiers just got out of their tanks, dropped their rifles, and joined the crowds. And Shah was deposed. That is the power that Hussain has. This is how he generates that sense of self-dignity, that value of self-determination, that pride that his head will be cut but will not bow in front of anyone. This is the force Hussain ibn Ali has, and that is there within all of us, and he awakens it. Then, it was again a BBC documentary, I believe. The mothers of Afghanistan were being interviewed. And at that time, the Soviet Union was in Afghanistan. And the Mujahideen of that time were fighting the raging tanks of the Soviet forces. So there were mothers who had sent their children, minors, not even at the age of 18, tying themselves with jackets strapped with bombs, who would go crawl under the tanks of the Soviets and detonate themselves and blow up the tanks. And later on the Lebanese were doing the same thing to the Israeli forces, occupying Israeli forces. So the interviewer asked one of those mothers a question, and I was only listening to the translations. He said, why do you do this? And this is what I heard in that documentary. She said, if Zainab can send her own and Muhammad, then we can send our own. That is the power in the message of Hussain ibn Ali. He arouses that passion within us, the passion that no, this head will not bow. If it will bow, it will only bow to God, otherwise it will be cut. And it is so powerful. It moves the masses and the humans, because deep within us there is that truth that we will not surrender save to God. Now think about this carefully. I know many wrongs are happening in this world. Millions of people have been killed. But the Gaza genocide, what everybody is calling a genocide now, beyond ethnic cleansing, is being played out in real time. Emaciated children being killed, called for food, and then being shot. Barbarism to its peak. You know, people define human beings as rational animals. I would say, what about adding to this definition? Human beings are those who have humanity filling their hearts. Otherwise, we are humans by form, but the very essence of being human is missing from us. Just as the essence of Islam has gone missing from Islam, of course, it's being revived in every heart throughout this global family of ours. But I want to make a point here. Being played out in real time, their defiance is touching the hearts of humanity. And there is a great difference between the time of Hussain and today's time. During the time of Hussain, people were ignorant. They did not know. And that is why when you find Sajjad in the streets of Sham, they would say God has put to death and outlaw your father. And he would recite the verses of the Quran, and then they would say, oh, are you the son of the Prophet? Was it the grandson of the Prophet that they have killed? There was fear of reprisals within Sham as soon as people began to understand, and quickly Yazid had to cover up for himself and send them back. Today's world, social media is portraying the scenes as they are. And you know what is touching the hearts of the people? Not the oppressed state of the Palestinians only. No. It is their sense of self-worth and dignity. That we will starve, we will be cut into pieces, we will die, but we will defy you. Do whatever you want, and that is touching the hearts. That is arousing the masses around the world to call out to their governments to shun this atrocity. The only difference is that back in the day the people were with the oppressors, were with Yazid and with his father Muawiyah. And a lot of the, our noble Sunni scholars are now talking about Muawiyah and saying that this man was not a good man. He was nothing to do with Islam. Their muftis are now speaking, and thank God they are, so that we can come out of this delusional state of ours and get Islam back to its essential position. In Britain, America, Europe, at this point, it is only the leaders of the states, both the non-Muslim and Muslim, that are supporting the Zionist state and the butchery and massacre of the Gazans. The people's hearts are with the defiant spirit of the people of Gaza. So this is the power in Hussain Salamullah alayhi. And this is something within all of us. Now, when people say to an oppressor that, look, you are powerful, but my head will not bow. Do what you want. Do what you want. Put shackles on me. My heart is unshackled. The shackles have gone off the minds now. Can you see that? Once you can shackle the mind, you get a slave obedient. But once the minds awaken, the shackles break and no amount of worldly shackles can bind them anymore. Put me in prison, do what you will. Kill me, do what you will. Starve me, do what you will. I will stand defiant. That is Hussain. By Allah, you will never fight another like me, he said. Do you know, in his last battle, I need to finish this by the way, there's some more things I want to say. In his last battle, they themselves were saying, this man is thirsty, hungry, he has got no helpers. You will not fight another like me, he said. And you find this description when Zainab Salamullah alayha comes into Kufa. And when the women of Kufa see their state, they begin to lament. I need not your tears of pity. Your man kill us and you weep upon us? By God, go and cry upon your own dead, for there is not a single household but my brother has killed one or another. Cry on your own. This is defiance. That was Hussain. Not only will I not bow my head, but I will stand like a raging, roaring lion. And if I can devour you all, I will. And in the process, if you kill me, then do so. That is the power that Hussain has, and that Hussain is in there in every one of us. Let us pray Surah Fatiha for the poor souls that are losing their lives in Gaza and elsewhere, Muslim or non-Muslim. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the criminals to justice, and may we live enough to see that happen. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the few minutes that we have, you see, Imam Hussain does not only appear to us at a rational level. If you have no religion, nor the fear of accountability, then be free man in this world of yours. For this, what you are doing is below the status and dignity of a free man. It is not only that. No. There is something so deep in Imam Hussain. There is a deep spirituality in Imam Hussain that is awakening something very, very profound within us. It's evoking some sense of reality that we have forgotten. But the other thing is that his message is emotionally appealing. And emotions are to do with the heart, not the gray matter. And when you touch the heart, then the reality begins to awaken. For heart is our reality, not this thinking brain. This is a false imposition upon us. This is the reality. I was with the Christians in the old house on Mosey Road. They said, do you have the equivalence of Jesus? So I narrated to them the story of Asghar. And they teared and they cried. Any mother looking at the story of Hussain, any father looking at that little girl coming out of her tent, saying, Father, look at me, I die of thirst. Anyone listening to the story when Sukaina says, Astaslamta lil maut ya abata. Have you surrendered to that, O Father? How may I not surrender when I have no helpers and no brothers and no children left? Then, O Father, take your Sakina back to Medina. When these stories are narrated, they impact the heart so profoundly that the heart breaks and it pains. When they hear the stories of Hussain, and I know a lot of these are not narrations, but they are depicting the status of Hussain. How dare the Muslims reduce the azadari and the grief of Hussain by black and white of their ink and say this is reported and this is not reported? Are you depriving a human from a human? When somebody of yours die, do you not feel the pain and does your heart not break? When Hussein's Asghar is killed, do you think his heart did not break? Do you think Akbar fell and Hussain did not lament and did not grieve? Do you think the lion of Hussain turns upon the dust and Hussein's heart doesn't break? How dare, how dare. No. Live this emotion, it is true emotion. Pain with Hussain. It is so painful, so painful. These sentiments of Hussain, when they are pronounced, they touch the heart so deeply. Not only the emotion, but something deeper than emotion. He stands upon an elevated place, turns to the tent, and listens to the sobbing of the women. He looks towards the dead bodies, dismembered in front of him. And then this is attributed to Hussain. Allahumma taraktul khalqa turran fi hawak. Oh Allah, I have abandoned the creation in your love. Waitamtu layaliya li arak. Oh Allah, I will abandon this sakina of mine so that I may meet with you. فَلَوْ كَتَعَتْنِ السُّيُوفِ إِرْبًا إِرْبًا. O Lord, even if the blades were to tear me into pieces, my heart will not yield to other than you. That deep, deep spiritual and emotional message touches us all. And I finish with this. Do you know what has touched the hearts of humanity at present? It is not the defiance per se of the Palestinians. Do you know what has touched them? It is not only the emotions of a father lamenting and crying upon the rubble of a building and says, "Where are my 5 children?" And he calls out to each one of them by their names. You've seen that, haven't you? It is not only that, but as the father and the mother stand and they say, "Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil," that touches them deep, deep within. Be they Muslims, Jews, Christians, atheists, all of them are touched by this. And that is our Hussain. And our Palestinians are no less than our Hussain. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free them and us of this oppression, them of their physical oppression and us of this emotional oppression that we have to live through this. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammadin al-Mustafa wa ala aliyin al-Murtada wa ala Fatimat al-Zahra wa ala al-Hasan al-Mujtaba wal Hussain al-Shahid bi Karbala wa ala Ali ibn al-Hussain wa Muhammad ibn Ali wa Ja'far ibn Muhammad wa Musa ibn Ja'far wa Ali ibn Musa wa Muhammad ibn Ali wa Ali ibn Muhammad wal Hasan ibn Ali wa Hujjatillah ibn al-Hasan al-Qa'im al-Mahdi al-Muntadhar. اللهم عجل فرجا وسهل مخرجا واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.